Tech fatigue. It's real. Another year, another quote-unquote fan edition from Samsung, and you could be forgiven for thinking the Galaxy Tab S10 FE is just the Galaxy Tab S9 FE with a new coat of paint and a $50 markup, right? But is it really though? Because here's the thing. Sometimes what looks like, at least at first glance, a copy-paste job turns out to be a smarter, sharper, newer version of what was made before. So I did what I always do. I took the new Tab S10 FE and stacked it right next to the Tab S9 FE. Then I spent 2 weeks switching between them, editing videos, streaming shows, sketching half-finished to-do lists, and yes, doom scrolling also. And let me tell you that there are differences. Some are tiny, some are bold, and even a few might go as far as convincing you to leave that iPad Air or regular iPad wishlist sitting in your Notes app a little longer, but that's left to see. So today we are unpacking it all. Design, display, performance, cameras, battery, and yeah, value. Because if you're spending $500 on a mid-range tablet, on an Android mid-range tablet, I should say, then it better offer more than a new subtle shade of blue. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's kick this off with design, which, as I mentioned already, at first glance, looks as if Samsung just slapped on they slapped a new label on last year's model and called it a day. The Tab S10 FE looks almost identical to the S9 FE, and I mean, almost no difference, but careful here, because the S10 FE does pull ahead with its thinner and lighter look, in that aluminum unibody, which by the way feels just a touch more premium in hands depending on how you hold it. Some very obvious similarities here, on the other hand, will include the power button, which still doubles as a fingerprint scanner, and it's also still just as fast as before, and it's also just as reliable. I'd say same speed on both tablets when it comes down to that fingerprint scanner. You have volume rocker and micro SD card tray here, exactly, on the same spot on both tablets. And oh, here's another feature that is different. Speaker grills. You've got dual stereo speakers on either one of these, but as you notice here, the design is different. More of a slit style on the S10 FE here versus the classic grill on the S9 FE. A tiny change, but it does give the device a more refined and modern look. USB-C is still here, but no, it doesn't push out video signal. And yes, the pogo pins are still hanging out on the side here, and I'm happy to share that, accessories for these two are interchangeable. I mean, a little bit of play here and there with the newer one because it's thinner, but they are interchangeable to a certain extent. Unlike on the new Tab S10 FE Plus, since that new one is larger, but I'll talk about that in that specific battle video. Overall, for the design, I'm gonna give it to the Tab S10 FE here. It's a more premium, lighter, thinner, modern look tablet. So, verdict for me will be Tab S10 FE. And by the way, if this is your first time visiting, welcome to the channel here. I truly appreciate you stopping by. Please do me a favor, hit both the like and the subscribe button there. I truly appreciate that. All right, so moving on to display here, it's pretty straightforward. Both tablets rock a 10.9-inch IPS LCD panel, rocking a resolution of 2304 by 1440. Again, this is for either one of these two tablets. The refresh rate is also high up there at 90 Hz, which is pretty neat, again, on both tablets. Now, it's not an OLED display or anything, but you're still getting, crisp text, punchy colors, and smooth motion for everyday use. Watching YouTube, Netflix, or playing games, zero complaints whatsoever. It's not, melting your eyeballs beautiful, but for the price, it's solid. Very solid. And if you are like me and tend to use your tablet poolside or, let's be honest, in the shower, Don't lie. This is a judgment-free zone. Anyways, if you do that, IP68 water and dust resistance is still there. So accidental splashes, spilled latte or toddler's mystery juices, you're definitely covered on either one of these two tablets, water resistance and dust. So that's pretty neat to have here. Now, the verdict for displays, I'm gonna say it's a draw or it's a tie, right? It's literally the same display, but I'm gonna add that the 10FE display here is calibrated slightly differently. I noticed that temperatures are slightly cooler on here. You have to pay attention to it, especially when you compare the whites, putting them side by side, slightly cooler, but I'm not saying that it gives it any additional advantage or points, but if you like that, it's kind of a subjective thing. If you like that, you might prefer the display on here, but to me, it's a tie. All right, let's go ahead and move on to specs now and performance. And here's where things start to get a bit more exciting, because under the hood, the Tab S10 FE packs a new chip in that Exynos 1580, replacing the 1380 from the Tab S9 FE. And look, this isn't, some dramatic earth-shattering leap, right? But it's a very clear and noticeable step or noticeable leap forward. Gaming, Call of Duty Mobile, PUBG Mobile, Asphalt 9, all of that, right? Totally playable on either one of these two tablets, but frame rates are smoother, load times are snappier on the S10 FE, and the overall experience is just better than it is on the S9 FE. Also, no, it does not turn into a hand warmer as quickly as the S9 FE normally would. But of course, as you push it or for long gaming sessions, you're definitely guaranteed to see it get warm. Again, nothing serious or nothing scary. Samsung also claims the GPU performance more than doubled on the S10 FE here when compared to the S9 FE, and in my real-world use, I think it shows. Even UI animations are slick, right, or slicker, and multitasking feels smoother. And to be fair, I've had the S9 FE for well over a year, right, so it kind of makes sense. But aside from the chipset upgrade, we also do have other things that play into why the S10 FE, is a little bit better. Things like memory upgrade, right? The base 10FE model with 128 gigs of internal storage actually comes with 8 gigs of RAM, whereas the base of the S9 FE with 128 gigs of internal storage comes with 6. And if you want to flex or push your budget even more, there is a 12 gigs of RAM option tied to the 256 gigs of internal storage variant for the Tab S10 FE versus only 8 gigs for the 256 gigs on the S9 FE. And both tablets still support microSD expansion, but here's the kicker. The S10 FE here can go up to 2 terabytes, while the S9 FE stops at 1 terabyte. So if you are planning to hoard, 4K videos, or you're just that person who downloads their entire streaming library offline, well, you'll be set with the S10 FE. On the software side, you have Android 15 here with One UI 7 out of the box for the S10 FE versus the earlier model on the versus the earlier version or the earlier release on the S9 FE here, currently running Android 14 here, but it is eligible for One UI, or Android 15 I should say, and One UI 7 when it's rolled out to the S9 FE. And speaking of update and rolling out and eligibility and all that good stuff, the Galaxy Tab S10 FE now will see 7 years of software updates versus the S9 FE's 5 years of software updates. Plus, it's been out for well over a year now, and I'm talking about the S9 FE, of course. So you have a little bit less than 4 versus the 7 years on the S10 FE. And still sticking with software, the S10 FE is currently enjoying Galaxy AI features, but the S9 FE is not, although eventually it is supposed to see some of those AI features. Other than that, all of the differences that I've covered on either one of these two tablets, they're both, nice mid-range tablets that are customizable, enjoyable to use, multitasking, Samsung DeX. You do have access to all of that on either one of these two, with the split screen, floating windows, and all of that multitasking magic. But with that, there are differences that will impact your user experience. Now, with all of this said, as far as specs and performance, clearly I'm going to give it to the Tab S10 FE here as the winner because of everything that I just listed, right? Anywhere from the chipset to early access to One UI and all that good stuff. Moving on to cameras now, and no one's buying a tablet for the camera, but if you end up using it, say for Zoom calls, scanning documents or awkwardly filming your kid's school play, you might want to consider the Tab S10 FE. It's loaded with a 13 megapixel camera on the back here compared to the 8 megapixel we find on the back of the S9FE. Picture and video quality has been better on the S10FE here when it comes down to using the main camera. But using the front camera, the front-facing cameras here, you have 12 megapixel ultra wide on either one of these two tablets. They're both excellent for video calls with fairly sharp details. And yes, both can shoot up to 4K at 30 FPS. For cameras, let's go ahead and keep it simple and give it to the S10FE here with everything that it comes loaded with. Let's go ahead and move on to battery now. Well, you get the same size battery on both tablets, and the battery life here is very respectable on either one. Frankly, I find them to be about the same, about 7.5 hours of screen on time, which will easily, for most user, of course, take them through the entire day. That includes, streaming, note-taking, gaming, and occasional YouTube, rabbit hole. Charging remains the same for either one of these two, 45-watt charging, right? So you can charge them relatively fast. Now, when it comes down to battery, I'm just gonna say it's a tie, right? Same size battery, 8,000 milliamp hour, all of that good stuff, so it's a draw. With all of this said, which one should you go for? Now, with the refinements and upgrades, is the Galaxy Tab S10 FE automatically worth it at $500 with the price increase? Because if you put them side by side, it's definitely pricier than last year's S9FE. And with that, of course, comes a better performance, more RAM, smarter AI features, and a sleeker build, and even an upgraded camera. It's a pretty solid package. So if you were in the market, so assuming you're currently in the market for either one of these two specifically, you're currently looking at which one to pick between these two, the choice is very simple. I would highly recommend that you go for the S10 FE. For the extra $50, you get a ton more, versus what you get from the Tab S9 FE here. Now, that doesn't mean that the Tab S9 FE is a bad tablet. It's just that if you're in the market for either one of these two, your choice should be this one. Now, that said, if you already own the Tab S9 FE, you probably don't need to upgrade unless you are craving that performance boost, which in that case, I would not suggest that you go from an S9 FE to an S10 FE. I would actually suggest a flagship. You are ready. If you are looking for more performance, for more power, I should say, right? Then you can pick up refurbished Tab S9 or even a refurbished Tab S8, right? Get pretty flagship stuff on there. So consider a refurbished flagship if you're currently looking for a performance boost. On the other hand, if you are coming from an older tab or just want a reliable mid-range tablet that nails the basics and then some, then the Tab S10 here is the one to go for. That's just my take. I'm certainly hoping that this was informative. Let me know with any questions or comments you may have in the comment section where I'm going to catch you. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hit both the like and the subscribe button there. I truly appreciate that. I'm going to catch you in the comment section like I always do. And I'm also going to catch you in the next video. Up until that next video, of course, as always, stay safe out there.